Anything that might confirm your old sense of self, they take away.
One of the constants of 20th century Jewish immigration, of Jewish intellectual movements, has been to lessen the power of Europeans in America.
And why is that?
And because they felt that that power represented a threat to them, and especially in the long run.
They wanted to have the United States become less Christian, less
European.
White European.
Yeah,
why is that?
Because, and then you can easily find Jewish activists who say that when they talk about immigration. But the idea is that if you have a homogeneous European society, you can easily evolve towards Nazism. Mm-hmm. In other words, but if you have a society where each ethnic group has a sort of, only a very, very limited power, then that could never happen. You can never have a coalition.
So it looks like Israel's economy not doing well. In fact, Dr. Surkov is going to say it is a zombie economy. Let's listen.
I call the Israeli economy a zombie economy because every economic indicator, every analysis conducted by professionals is saying that the Israeli economy doesn't really exist anymore. It has collapsed to the point that no sane person should give Israel any credit. The bonds that Israel is selling around the world are sold for political reasons. The only ones who are buying these bonds are just trying to finance Israel's genocide and are not really interested in making an interest payments on these bonds, because it's very unlikely that Israel will ever be able to pay back those bonds. So this is a deeper level of crisis than we've seen in economic crises of the 21st century, like in Argentina or in Greece, where the economy collapses, but the state doesn't collapse because the state institutions continue to exist. The state can still rebuild the economy, maybe reissue a new currency, make some kind of debt repayment program. This is not the case with Israel because the institutions themselves are falling apart. But nevertheless, the killing continues. The soldiers continue to fight. Those soldiers who are still deployed in Gaza. And a lot of people in Israel are continuing to live their lives as if nothing has happened. And even what is really glaring is the stock exchange in Israel, which is rising. So these things, I think, are a lesson for us in how capitalist economy works. Because we live in a kind of information age in which material things don't influence the economy the way they used to in the 20th century. And people really assign value to things like stocks based on their predictions of the future. And Israel is in a state of deep delusion. So it's not an information economy, it's a disinformation economy. And this is what makes it possible for this zombie economy to keep trotting along, even though it doesn't really have any life in it anymore.
So,
wow.
Well, I have one more clip I want to play, and then we'll bring in Ryan. And so here is Matthew Ho. He was on the show before. You'd think he ran as a Green or something. And but listen to what he has to say about the Israeli economy.
What is your impression of the Israeli economy today from the time you just spent there? It's in really bad shape. I think we've talked about this before, Judge. The numbers, in a sense of seeing the money leaving the country, the foreign investment not going into it, the 40,000 plus businesses have closed, one of the 4 major ports in Israel going bankrupt, those types of things. But, I just saw other numbers, almost 35% decrease in imports and a similar decrease in exports in the last year. So the numbers themselves show that Israel is in a perilous position. But there's a huge caveat to that, and I'll get to in a moment. But when I was there in Israel and in Palestine, you could see it. You could see this economic bleeding out occurring in real time. And the big thing where you see it is in the tourism. You see it in the fact that Israeli tourism is down about 75%. Ooh. And when you're in Jerusalem, it's empty. I'll give some examples. People may be familiar with this. Judge, we had a problem with our schedule one day because the Palestinians we were going to meet in Jerusalem weren't allowed to go in Jerusalem. This is the consequence of the apartheid policy.
First, just let me stop it there. Tourism is down in Israel. You're kidding. You're kidding. They have fireworks every other night. How exciting is that? Am I right? They're so nice to foreigners. They'll even share their saliva with you, if you know what I mean. I mean, come on. Come to Israel for the food and the beaches, and stay because you support Palestine, and now you're in prison. Okay, hey, God, he's got more to say.
Of the Israeli government that Palestinians can't go places, Jerusalem or to other cities, what have you. So we had some free time. So we went to the Mount of Olives. And, it was a beautiful Friday morning. Sky was blue, probably about 68 degrees. There should have been 1,000, 1,500 people, on the Mount of Olives, as there normally would be. We were the only group there. We were the only group of people for more than an hour at that spot. And then we walked down the hill to the Garden of Gethsemane and went to the Church of Nations down there. The same thing, too. There was nobody else there. We went to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. If anyone's ever been there, and for people who don't know, that's the site of Jesus' crucifixion and his burial. And normally you're there, and it's like you're online for Space Mountain at Disney World, right? I mean, like it's a mob scene. Right. And no, it kind of reminded me of walking through a supermarket late at night. There's some people there, but it's not very busy. So I mean, You saw this over and over again. I mean, I can give you a lot of examples of places you go into. You talk to the restaurant owners; they've laid off all their staff. The hotel we were staying at they had no visitors, no hotel guests for the 10 months prior to our arrival. And then after we left, they were shutting down again. So you can just see that the emptiness, the consequence of this war in terms of the bankrupting of Israel. And of course, then if it's bad for Israel, it's worse for the Palestinians. So the Palestinians who've been under an economic strangulation for decades by the Israelis, well, a fifth of their workforce prior to October 7th worked in Israel. And this affects Israelis as well. But since October 7th of 2023, that 200,000 Palestinian workforce has been unable to go into Israel to work. There's rumors that about 20 or 30,000 of those are still getting in because Israelis really do need them. But what you see then is in Palestine, in the West Bank, you see an unemployment rate of 60%. And we can go on with, different points. But the one caveat I want to mention, Judge, is, well, how is Israel surviving? How are they going to get by on this? And that's because of the United States loan guarantee, the fact that the United States is a guarantor of Israeli debt. And so since last year, in the last 13 months, you've seen a 300 to maybe 300 or 400% increase in the amount of debt, the amount of bonds that Israel has issued. And you say, who's buying these things? Why would they be buying them, knowing the reality of the economic situation, the military situation, the political situation for Israel? Well, it's because these bonds, this debt is backed by the United States. We guarantee it. So it'd be like you or I getting a mortgage and having Elon Musk co-signing with us. And this is essentially where the Israelis come back on, why they're willing to go the way they are, why they're willing to allow themselves to be isolated by the world, to hurt themselves economically, to overextend, exhaust their military, to cause their own political chaos, friction. People talk about civil war. I don't think it'll get to that point, but it's also something that you just can't dismiss outright. And the point is that they can do it because the United States is going to continue to back them financially and be that guarantor, be that co-signer for them going forward.
So that's why Israel can continue to commit a genocide. That's why Israel can continue to be the terrorists of the Middle East and bomb Syria, Lebanon, Iran, Yemen, whoever they feel like bombing, they're going to bomb. And that's why they can be the terrorists in the Middle East. They can be the worst neighbor in the world. They don't have to live according to international law because they have the biggest bully in the world. The United States has their back. And even as their economy tanks, and they issue debt, the United States is guaranteeing their debt. So, and there's a little bit more to this bond issue, but let me bring Ryan in. Ryan, what do you say what have you heard about the Israeli economy? And take it wherever you want.
I'm really glad you bring this up because it's something that I've seen discussed. I mean, it's very clear to see, any nation that's just expending this much resource nonstop, there's going to be issues like this. I'm glad you brought it up because I need to do more research on it to see how bad this is. I didn't know it was really to this level. I knew it was bad, but this is fascinating and alarming at the same time. Like, I think there's more to this in a lot of ways. Like, I think, first of all, to your point, think about the U.S. government doing this, especially now with the way the world's becoming aware of what Zionism is or what Israel's government's doing. For what benefit are they just, the main point is, they could stop this like every other reason we've made by stopping the funding of the bombs. This is another way. If they wanted to stop the genocide, they could. One of the only UK in a similar way has influence, but the US government could stop this like that. But the thoughts that come into my mind is, it's interesting because Israel, more than just the United States, it's a parasite nation. It's what it does. The ideology, it infiltrates, it manipulates, it outsources. You can see them building these Unit 8200 companies all over the world. But the thing that comes to my mind, and my point in that is that I imagine there's more siphoning of things in that way. But the idea of the transition coming, right? Israel has been bullying its way to the front of this kind of AI tech direction, so Silicon Valley, everything. And so what jumped to my mind is interesting is what if this is, kind of almost, or rather it's happening and they don't want it to, but now by design, they're just going to run it out and then do some kind of transition to some kind of digital currency or with the US backing. And maybe it starts there and that's the logic. Just a thought that jumped in my mind, but that kind of makes sense with where this whole thing seems to be going.
So even, Iran war shock drags Israel's economy into sharp second quarter slump. GDP shrunk 3.5% in the second quarter, with private consumption down 4% and fixed investment plunging 12.3%. Economists eye possible rate cut in September. So their economy's going down. But here's what's keeping it afloat. As we just said, the United States guarantee. But worse than that, here's the thing that's worse. So Israel's economy is completely tanking. As Matthew Ho said, did he say 40,000 businesses closed? Did I hear that right? That's what I think he said. And of course, we know there's a brain drain. People leaving Florida. This is from Gen X Girl. Florida is forcing local governments to buy unrated Israel bonds. Now, Israel, their bonds, credit agencies downgraded Israel's bonds. So Israel started issuing unrated bonds. Unrated bonds are high risk. So Florida local governments refused to buy unrated bonds. Florida state government passed a law banning local governments from refusing to purchase unrated Israel bonds. So basically they're forcing them to purchase these bonds.
Sounds familiar.
It's always a positive when you have to make it illegal to refuse something. Am I right?
Well, let's go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, it rings true, or the similar, like with and actually interesting. That just came out as a story where the U.S. government came out and said, through tweets, that you wouldn't get aid in hurricanes or disasters if you didn't support Israel. They walked it back. Weirdly enough, they actually walked it back on the page, then put it back, then deleted the page, then lied about it. It was very obvious.
Yes.
But so that happened back in Hurricane Harvey as well. So it's the same kind of thing. This just speaks clearly to Israel's government is controlling policy in this country in a lot of ways. We can't deny that anymore.
So yes, 46,000 businesses closed since October 7th in Israel. Wow. And here's the bond scam. Recent Florida legislation, new legislation in Florida, according to the Florida House of Representatives, allows local governments to invest in Israel bonds without requiring a minimum bond rating. The legislation passed unanimously and was signed by the governor. So down here it says Israeli bonds prohibits local governments from requiring minimum bond ratings in certain circumstances. So so here we go over here. It says that unrated bonds generally present a greater risk of losses of principal and interest than higher rated securities. Investors need to be comfortable with this higher risk profile and conduct thorough research before investing in unrated Israel bonds or any other unrated bonds. So that's happening. So they're you want to see how much they've actually bought? Florida, overall, Florida government has bought $200 million in these bonds. Miami-Dade County has bought $76 million of these bonds. Broward County has bought $5 million. And Palm Beach County has bought $700 million.
Whoa.
Palm Beach. I wonder why that.
Whoa.
I wonder why Palm Beach. First of all, they're all loaded. And I'm going to guess a lot of Jewish people are there, right? A lot of Zionists are in Palm Beach. So there you go. Wow, we have a fun time when we go to West Palm Beach. That's where the regular people live. I do comedy in West Palm. We're not wealthy enough to go to Palm Beach. We have to go to West Palm Beach. My parents actually lived in West Palm Beach when they retired. So yeah,
I think
so they're forcing. So that's weird that the government is kind of forcing them to buy these bonds and prop up Israel. But again, the United States is backing all their bond sales, so it's really not a risk in a sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, kind of though, but I get the real strong sense with all of this. I'm going to really try to dive into this a lot more but that this feels like a setup, right? I mean, it clearly feels like some kind of, like, it's very obvious that that's country struggling, and that now the U.S. government's putting its support behind something that they know is not sound. Like, and let's be clear. I think we all, whether this is part of it or not, I think let's just make it exact. They're telling you there's going to be a financial transition. We're going to shift into stable coin, CBDC. You know, that's where they're telling you this is going. So I've always been on guard for what that would, you know, what's going to be the rationale, what's going to be the big disaster that they use to kind of usher us in. Don't worry, we have it saved in digital currency. So I feel like this, just my gut feeling, it feels like there's something to this, like creating a problem to then rationalize how this transition takes place. Because one of my main points in the recent show I did called the Technocratic Tiptoe was that, you know, Israel and the United States it's whether or not you know, are calling out the genocide, whether you disagree with that entirely, you can't decouple Israel's part of where this all goes, the AI, the technocracy, the, you know, everything, surveillance. So that stands out to me. That's very interesting. So, being forced to buy Israeli bonds, isn't that something? I just think that's amazing. Let me just quote Jen's ex-girl again. She says, fun fact, U.S. national debt just hit $37 trillion, and our government is the loan guarantor for Israel bonds. So if they collapse, our government agreed to pay for them. In other words, taxpayers' pensions are used to buy Israel junk bonds, and taxpayers are expected to pay for the junk bonds if they collapse. So I guess a silver lining in Israel's economic collapse is that you don't lose your bond money. I guess that's the silver lining. Well, I mean, it's, you know, is this less spending? Is this smaller government? You know, it's just like, it's just so clear that's, I mean, if we're trying to cut spending, let's start with a terrible investment like that, but it's just clearly not what they're trying to do at all.
So, yeah, this seems like more big government, right?
Yeah, I mean, everywhere you look, I mean, I'm sure you've covered it. We're more, right now compared to last year, more spending, which, you know, you could argue that it'll be less by the time they somehow, like, I don't know how it's even possible, but bigger government, more spending. I mean, you could go down the list. Yeah. Even every bullet point of the Maha direction is clearly not what promised, but you've got the team sport politics screamers in the paradigm over there, you know, yay, whatever Trump and everybody said today, yay, we're winning. You know, it's just hard to watch, but, you know, there's plenty of honest people out there that are calling it. You know, I really Judge Napolitano has done a really great job being critical of this stuff when plenty of other people that are conservative or Republican are just completely ignoring it. You know, good on him. Good on him. All right, Ryan Christensen, I appreciate you making time for us. Everybody, come on. Everybody check out The Last American Vagabond. Thanks for your time today, buddy. My pleasure. Okay. See you next time, man. Talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Jimmy Dore, it's time to go to Rumble, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay.
All right, we're going to see you over at Rumble in about a minute. See you there, folks.
Hey, what if you could delay your next 2 mortgage payments? That's right. Imagine putting those 2 payments in your pocket and finally getting a little breathing room. It's possible when you call American Financing today. If you're feeling stretched by everyday expenses, groceries, gas bills piling up, you're not alone. Most Americans are putting these expenses on credit cards, and there doesn't seem to be a way out. American Financing can show you how to use your home's equity to pay off that debt. You need to call American Financing today before you get to a point where you can't make those payments. Their salary-based mortgage consultants are helping homeowners just like you restructure their loans and consolidate debt, all without upfront fees. And their customers are saving an average of $800 a month. That's like a $10,000 raise. In fact, it's simple, and it could save your budget this summer. Call now before it's too late. 888-804-0303. That's 888-804-0303. Or visit AmericanFinancing.net/Jimmy.